Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and first and foremost, our wishes for a much better 2021 than has been the case in 2020. No need to go into that into a lot of detail. We'll cover it in the presentation. But also welcome to all of those who are listening in and to our outlook for 2021. I just want to try and get this screen a little bit clearer so that everyone can see properly. Right, so welcome, as I mentioned, to everyone. This is our attempt to really provide, rather than a formal presentation, a bit of an overview of the outlook for 2021, what Portugal as a market holds as a retirement, work or investment destination. And obviously what I'll be trying to do is to make a link between those opportunities and some of the business units or the brands that we have as a business in order to be able to help clients from all over the world to be able to make the most of the access to this wonderful country with all that it provides and that it holds. The inevitable question that everyone will be asking is, what is the COVID situation at the moment? We're all globally in the midst of a lockdown, and therefore it's natural that we would want to know how Portugal has fared in comparison to other countries. Broadly, this is the information from our National Advisory Service. We have around 72,500 active cases at the moment. Of the 413,000 confirmed cases, 334,000 have recovered. And unfortunately, in Portugal, since the beginning of the pandemic, we have had 6,906 deaths, fatalities. This statistic, or these statistics, are accurate as at the end of the year, last year. So what we have is a noticeable spike in cases since around the end of October. And this is following the pattern really that has been exhibited by most countries around the world. The so-called second wave, or the discovery of a new variant. And so that's meant that the infectious nature of the virus has been quite noticeable. And so many more people have been diagnosed with it, in addition to the fact, of course, that generally around the world, everyone is testing more. So the rules that apply at the moment for non-EU nationals to visit Portugal, they must have a negative COVID test, valid for the last, I believe it is 72 hours, and essential travel only is allowed. So residency, for example, would be considered essential travel. If you had, I suppose, a very ill family member and you needed to go and support them, that would be other sort of thing. But other than that, any other non-essential travel is not allowed. The country is in a strict lockdown at the moment. It's pretty much very strict until the 5th of January, so Tuesday, and then the president will be determining whether or not to declare another sort of continued state of emergency linked to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the vaccine has begun, the rollout has begun, starting with people involved or linked to the health sector, and then it will move on to the more critical groups, such as the most elderly, and so on successively through the country. Just to come back to that slide, you can see that the country has done around 5.6 million tests. And at the moment in intensive care, we have 482 people in intensive care unit, 2,814 total in hospital. Now, where does Portugal compare in relation to the world? So Johns Hopkins prepares this data on a regular basis. It's a little bit unclear because the background is white, but I will talk through that. Many of you will be considering Portugal as one of several possible options in terms of retirement destination, for example, or if you're a digital nomad, you may be looking for other locations in which to move and to be able to work quite freely. A lot of these countries don't yet have the data, But what we can say, if you look at, for example, Central and Latin America, two of the very popular retirement locations, so Mexico and Colombia, that do have data available, have statistically above 40, or in the case of Colombia, above 30% of its tested people are proving to be positive for COVID. So it's a bit of a worrying trend in that some of these emerging markets, which could also be retirement hotspots, that the degree or the percentage of the population that is actually testing positive is quite high. In terms of the growth of COVID testing generally, you can see the United Kingdom and the United States, of the countries that I've compared on this graph, continue to lead the way in terms of the number of tests. Of course, unfortunately, those two countries also have among the highest deaths per 100,000 population. So the fact that there is a lot of testing is hopefully helping in terms of the tracking, but it's not necessarily being a deterrent to the trend which has been observed in those two particular countries in terms of the number of deaths being registered. Portugal, you will see, is next along. I've compared just 5-6 countries: Canada, Spain, Ireland, Portugal, the United Kingdom, the United States. So after the US and the UK, Portugal is the country that does most tests per 100,000 or per 1,000 people, same thing. And if you look at the number of deaths, fortunately, it is just slightly worse than Ireland of the countries that I've compared. So very, very low down. So the probability of a death in Portugal statistically is much lower than, for example, in the United States or even in the United Kingdom, and slightly less than in Canada. You will also see that at the moment, if you go to the bottom left graph, that Portugal sits in a sort of light tone of blue, which means that many of the people moving to Portugal, especially from if they're seeking Portugal as a retirement destination, are actually moving from markets where the risk of COVID in terms of number of deaths, number of cases, hospitalizations and so on is worse than Portugal itself. Probably the one standout exception is Ireland, where the situation appears to be better overall, but pretty much all the other major outbound markets that contribute retirees or working people to Portugal have a worse COVID, or appear to have a worse COVID situation than Portugal itself. Importantly for everyone, you will be analyzing exactly what the real estate market has done during COVID, because everyone will need a place to stay. And so one of the statistics which is important is during the period of June to August. Now, clearly there are some other statistics which I haven't been able to obtain yet, but the number of number of real estate transactions during the COVID period has actually not decreased. There was a dip immediately after the diagnosis of the first cases in late February, March, and April, and that created that initial impact. But subsequent to that, there really has not been much of an impact directly COVID related, although tourism has taken a huge negative trend and hit, and that has meant that rentals, for example, especially in the large cities like Lisbon and Porto, are down as much as 10 to 20% in terms of the long-term rental values. Real estate prices, however, are up 5% in 2020, and that's a statistic that takes into account pretty much, I think, up to October or November of 2020, which meant that the real estate market remained robust. And one of the reasons for that is there was very little new product coming on the market by virtue of the fact that people got nervous, developers got nervous, and banks got nervous about the impact of COVID on the potential resale market or the sales market. And so the economic activity linked to real estate development has come down. Now, a lot of people will be looking at residency options. And here we've compared the two important residency options, the most obvious ones that people are following. The one is the D7 visa, which is essentially an income-based residency route. and the Golden Visa, which is an acquisition-based residency route, and quickly summarize some of the differences between them. The first is that the D7 applies anywhere, whereas the Golden Visa has a difference or experiences differences based on whether you're looking at buying something in an area of high density or low density, and whether you're looking at a rehabilitation type project. The D7 allows you to rent or to buy. The Golden Visa will not allow you to rent, and moreover will not allow you to use debt financing for any of the levels of Golden Visa for which you're applying. So if you're applying, for example, for a Golden Visa in a region which is 500,000, you can only use debt for any value above 500,000 and not up to that threshold. There are minimum levels of investment required in the Golden Visa. Again, they would differ depending on area, but no minimum levels apply to the D7. Changes are not expected to the D7 program, whereas they have already been signposted and announced by the government, and that is that high density areas will end. In other words, the Golden Visa will end in high density areas by the end of June 2021. In-country presence, so the D7 is really aimed at people who intend and wish to spend their time in Portugal, and therefore that typically has a requirement for it to be a residential type presence, which typically corresponds to 183 days or half a year, whereas the Golden Visa is a residency program via investment, and that means that it has very low residency requirement, on average 1 week per annum. There are pre-requirements for both of these programs. For example, if you're coming from the US, for example, you will need an FBI check report to make sure that you have no relevant criminal history and you're not excluded via that route. And so there will be a number of documents that you will need to gather in order to apply for either program. The NHR program, which is a low tax, 10% tax program on eligible foreign income, is applicable to the D7, because on the assumption that you are spending 183 days, and if you are resident in Portugal, you can then become tax resident as well. Whereas in the Golden Visa, you would only be able to access the NHR program really if you also decided to remain or reside in Portugal for at least 183 days. Multiple properties, well, it really wouldn't apply to the D7 program, because you'd have the property in which you were living, whether you buy it or rent it, whereas you could purchase multiple properties under the Golden Visa program. And the other thing that I would say is that there has been a tendency, and I won't go into this in a lot of detail, but the Golden Visa program in Portugal has caused huge price inflations, in particular in areas like Lisbon, where market prices have been driven largely by foreign investment into the Golden Visa program. And therefore, any property that is specifically priced for the Golden Visa level, there is some risk that there may be a bit of overpricing to make sure that the property value reaches the threshold required. If you need to read up a little bit more about this, then there's a section on Algarve Senior Living site covering visas, and another one covering the Golden Visa program, which will give you a bit of an idea of those programs. Then the next decision that a lot of people are taking at a distance is, before they move to Portugal, is whether they want to rent or buy. And we talk a lot about rental these days because of the fact that it is so difficult to travel to any new country, especially your desired destination, and therefore we're encouraging people to rent. And there are definitely situations in which you want to consider a rental before you buy or in lieu of a purchase. For example, if you want to trial out the lifestyle, or if you're not sure whether Portugal is the destination for you, or even within the country, if you're not sure whether a particular area or town or city is the right final destination for you, you might want to try out that destination via rental, and then if it doesn't work out, you can certainly move to another location, either rent or buy in another location. So please use the rental intelligently, especially in combination with the D7 visa, because it is an excellent way of accessing the Portuguese market. And if you want to get a sense of the sort of long-term rentals that are available, then again, one of our business areas is the long-term rental business. And we have a specific site for the Algarve, as an example, which is called algarvelonglets.com. And you can go on there and get a sense of the type of properties, the prices, the areas, and so on that are available. I often talk about this because it helps people get a sense of what's available in Portugal at the moment. And you can see, I won't go into a lot of detail, but the northern part of Portugal, a two-bedroom apartment will cost you around 250,000 euros, and rental will start around 700 euros a month. The Silver Coast, which is the area between Portugal and Lisbon, that can vary depending on whether the property is more traditional or modern. Rents will start around 750, but the purchase price will be 75,000, very cheap for a traditional property. It tends to be older, to around 220,000 as an average price for a two-bedroom property if it is more traditional. In the Cascais, just the real area, which is just a very upmarket area west of Lisbon, look to spend at least 350,000 for a purchase and 1,350 for a rental. If you're on the area between Cascais and Estoril and Lisbon, that comes down a little bit, maybe 225,000, and then rental starting at 900. In Lisbon itself, 300,000 plus and 1,500 for the rental. And then in the Algarve, which is the southernmost part of the country, about 190,000 euros is the starting point for a two-bedroom, and around 900 euros per month for a rental. Now, what I would say and point out to people, because a lot of people are looking at the possibility of moving to Portugal from a distance, and that is, do not expect to be in a prime location and pay inland prices. You know, we are talking about a country that has become extremely popular, where the real estate supply is not massive, especially the more modern, sort of thermally and acoustically comfortable type properties. They are in relatively limited supply, and therefore expect to pay a premium if you request a premium property or a premium location. Portugal, therefore, despite the situation in which we live at the moment, is really a blockbuster option. And many people out there on the web, on the net, will tell you about all the pros of Portugal. And this is really the points that, or these are the points that they will emphasize time and again. It is statistically the second best country at integrating expats. Expats feel very comfortable and feel that they integrate very quickly. It is the third safest country in the world. It has the 12th best healthcare. And in terms of price, expect, if you're coming from the US, for example, to save anywhere between 70 and 90% of your healthcare costs when compared to the US in terms of copay and things like that. The passport, if you decide to, after 5 years, apply for citizenship, is the world's third most powerful passport, tied with a few others. And that means that you can travel visa-free to a whole range of countries, 160 something or whatever it is, countries around the world. Diplomatic relationships, you're represented, there is consular representation and so on. So it is a passport with a lot of support, and where you can travel the world very safely. There is a lot of cheap public transportation, especially if you're a retiree. You will get discounts for all sorts of things, such as traveling on a bus and trains, access to museums, things like that. And there's an ease of travel and connectivity within Europe, which is very easy to do from main hubs like Lisbon and Faro, and even Porto, in terms of airlines, and then trains from locations like Lisbon and Porto, which go internationally. The euro is a stable currency. It's used by around 400 million people, and Portugal is one of the countries that has adopted the currency and used it for decades. The awards, it's been voted top 10 best places to live in the world. It's been the best place in the world to retire, and specifically the Algarve, for around 8 years in a row. It's among the top 10 places for Americans to live and work in the world. In fact, 3 regions in Portugal has been highlighted. One is the Algarve in the south, the other is Braga in the north, and the third are the Azores, all with very different characteristics. It has been voted the world's best beach destination, golfing destination, marina location, city break destination, conference, and the list goes on and on. So you can see that it's a small country, but with an immensely varied appeal. From a cost perspective, it continues to be the lowest cost of living in Western Europe, although people are sometimes surprised by how expensive housing sometimes is. Fuel or gas, electricity is also, and cars are the other expensive thing. Importing vehicles, if you can do them tax-free, then do so. The attractiveness to retirees is obviously one of the key factors why people are driven to Portugal or appeal and are attracted by Portugal. The D7 and the Golden Visa, two routes as we've talked about to get here. Low tax programs such as the non-habitual residency, again, an appealing factor. And then the fact that one can access residency programs either by renting or buying is particularly important for a lot of people. In line with this, we as a business have been obviously providing services in the area of helping expats move to Portugal, either on a medium-term or long-term basis for many years now. But we've also, for some years, had our eye on developing the right sort of product for the market. And we're very happy to say that 2021, finally, after many years of bureaucratic hurdles that needed to be overcome, 2021 is the year in which we intend to launch our first independent living, beach living project. It'll be called Luge Living, and it's located in the Algarve, in the very upmarket resort town of Praia da Luz. And it is a site that is going to be targeted mainly at expat and some Portuguese early stage pre-retirees or retirees. It's not a care home. A lot of people ask us, are you building a care home? Not at all. We're building an independent living resort, condominium resort, which will be fully accessible, have one of the largest landscape garden sites in the area. It'll have elevator access all the way through the resort itself. It'll come with a reception which fully staffed, including a site manager, security, although security luckily in Portugal is very, very good and it's a very safe country, but we understand that people come from all sorts of different locations around the world, and therefore they sometimes feel that this is an important factor, so we will have that. The things that we take for granted in many of our homes these days, so wireless internet throughout, underfloor heating, solar heating, and electric car charging will be included as standard in the properties and in the resort as a whole. There will be a residence lounge, several communal areas in which we'll obviously have to implement social distancing. There'll be meeting spaces, indoor and outdoor. From an amenities perspective, we'll have an outdoor saltwater pool probably and an indoor heated swimming pool. There'll be gyms, spa, massage and treatment rooms, barbecue areas, even a dedicated pet area because a lot of people have companions, animal companions. There will be between 1 and 3 covered parking spaces per apartment. We understand that people may want to have the vehicles. They may even want to import their special vehicle, and it's not often easy to find, a lockup type garage facility, so we will provide those. And then there are also lockup and lease storage rooms if you're looking at doing this as a sort of an early stage investment and then renting this out long term to a full-time resident, but want to keep some of your things there. So we're very excited as a business to hopefully be able to start finally contributing from a product perspective as well as a services perspective to some of the options available in the Portuguese market. And then we want to tell you a little bit about how you can access all this, because we have a lot of different sites, a lot of different routes in which through which you can contact us. So if you're looking at engaging with us about retirement living, then the first port of call would be algarveseniorliving.com. If you want us to act for you as a buyer or a rental agent, so as a finder agent, so you cannot get over to Portugal, but you want somebody you can trust who understands the market, then our team will represent you We will literally sign an agreement that means that we represent you as a finder, a little bit like the people who come from the US, Canada, and other markets, not many of them, that have an MLS system, a multiple listing service or system. We represent you as the client versus everybody else who's literally a listing agent and maybe has been talking to the owners about selling or listing their properties. We represent you. So if you like the idea of being represented with your own rights, if you will, as a buyer, then propertyfinderportugal.com is the site that describes that business model, which we've been running with a number of international clients very successfully. If you want to get a sense of what annual and winter lets are available, then in the Algarve we have a portfolio, and you can look that up in algarvelonglets.com. The reason we don't have it in other markets is that we tend to use a search functionality and approach to the other markets because many of the properties are unfurnished, so they turn over quite regularly. Whereas in the Algarve we have a very large portfolio, stable portfolio, which gets rented out, but is always there. So a property may at any stage be rented or not rented. But you can get a sense of the sort of pricing point at Algarve Long Lets. Then the property that I've just mentioned, at the moment it's off plan. We intend to launch it this month in January. And we will do so to the short list of clients. We have a few hundred clients that have asked us about this already. And that is luge-living or #living.com. And that will get you to that website. And then just an alert for those who are interested, we are about to launch, probably in the next month or so, a new buyer portal, which will help you as a buyer, and it'll work for rentals as well, sign up and keep tabs on options and opportunities that are available for you. We will be launching the site on a fairly exclusive basis, as I say, in the next month. But if you want to sign up to be sent alerts about this new site, then please email us. Our contacts are below. You can use the Algarve Senior Living email rather than giving you various other ones, or you can call us on each of those numbers in the different markets. And you can also follow us or like us on Facebook, or read periodically our posts on our blog, which is all about retirementoverseas.com. And finally, we just want to leave you with this thought for the new year. We celebrate with you from the Senior Living Villages families. So that's Portugal Senior Living, Algarve Senior Living, Luge Living, Algarve Long Lets, and Spain Senior Living. We want to celebrate with you a much safer and happier 2021, much more so than has been the case in 2020. I know that many of you have faced challenges of all sorts, and I hope on behalf of all of the team that those are overcome in 2021. And on behalf of the team here in the business, we want to wish everybody a very, very safe 2021. Thank you and Happy New Year, and hope to speak to you very shortly. Thank you. Bye now.